recounted the journey of digital India. You know, NEGP became Digital India in 2014 when Prime Minister Modi took over, and it got a huge thrust in terms of speed and scale of implementation. A lot of population scale infrastructure has been put in place. A lot of ground has been covered. I recall writing a book in 2016. It was an edited book called Modi's Odyssey: Digital India, Developed India, and that kind of laid out the paths for use of all pervasive use of ICT in national flagship programs. It was a collection of essays by sector experts, Mr. Ajay Kumar, who's now the Defense Secretary, Mr. Ramsevak Sharma, who's now heading NHA and has had many, many roles, Karan Bajwa himself, people from the private sector, government, thought leaders, they all etched out their vision of in each area what is it that Digital India should do over the next 3 years. We returned 61 recommendations, and I'm happy to tell you that almost all of them have found place in policy. And some of them have had major impact, including the fact that we talked about not just Jandan Aadhaar and mobile, which was popular there. We talked about cloud Aadhaar and mobile, and UPI and payment systems, and this entire fintech ecosystem is a direct result of that. So having done that, now we find that there is a time to go back, review what has been achieved, and go back to the drawing board. So there are two things. One is that we are in a changed world reality. Prime Minister Modi has given the call for Atmanirbhar Bharat, which most people misconstrue as a closed economy. Uh, he does not mean that. Having authored Modinomics and having known him for over 20 years, I can tell you that he means it is in India at the heart of globalization. So it is India outwards globalization is Atmanirbhar Bharat. Atmanirbhar Bharat is not only self-sufficient, it is also making others benefit from great skills and manufacturing capability and services capability that India would have as a country. As a byproduct of Atmanirbhar Bharat would be what I call Atmanirbhar growth, which is the end objective. Atmanirbhar growth is a growth that I define as job generative, spatially dispersed, equitable, and sustainable. Now, if this has to happen, and India indeed has to become a $10 trillion economy, and I had authored that book, India 2030, where I had said that it would be a $10 trillion economy by 2030, perhaps we miss it by a year or two. But if we have to stay on the path, two things have to happen in the next phase of digital India. One is that we have today a problem of plenty. Every ministry has got too many applications, and there is no one ministry view for a citizen or a one government view for the citizen. Even within government ministries, there are no connectivity. So I think the next big task is creating a connected government, demolishing these silos within ministries and within the governments and within the center and the state, at least in terms of workflows, so that the government has got one citizen view on one hand, and on the other hand, the citizen has got one government view also. What are my entitlements? What is it that I deserve? Because right now I have to go to 30, 40 places to see how I deal with the government. So these two things have to be broken down. The second key thing that has to happen is administrative reforms have to be speeded up. Most of the key success stories, whether CA21, whether it is GST, whether it's Aadhaar, all of that has been enabled by an enabling legislation and a huge amount of administrative reform. And now you have to see a second wave of that. So some of that legislation we are seeing in the form of Farm Bill, in the form of education policy, in the form of National Digital Health Mission. Moving forward, I think dematerialization of property and land could be one such path-breaking area which would spur the economy on. And it will, all these things put together would not only enhance ease of doing business, they would enhance ease of living, and they're going to put India on a totally different economic trajectory. Along with this will come a lot of complications. These would be in regulatory spaces, it would be in privacy spaces, these could be in technology spaces, it would be in the spaces of federal structure of India itself. How do you over juxtapose a centralized, visible kind of a system on the federal structure of India? And I remember this used to be a big debate during NEGP, and Chandrasekhar ji used to define that what is the function of governance, and he said that the sovereign function, he kind of, from the process, he disassociated what was the sovereign function. Is a sovereign function is still with the government. And I suppose we would have a similar debate in this one, and we will finally find that the sovereign function and the federal function is still where it ought to be, but a lot of processes and systems and procedures have been simplified. So, Mr. Chandrasekhar, of course, has played many roles. Recently, he's been working on uh, digital future of India. He runs a foundation now who's working precisely on these comparative and regulatory aspects. And now invite him to share his thoughts on digital future for the digital state. And I think perhaps he's going to speak from a regulatory prism on this.
Thank you, Samir, once again for this opportunity. Good to meet with all of you. Good to see Shefali also here. He's been associated for many years while she was in the NIC. Um, it's, I think, a real interesting topic to talk about in today's India, which is the future of the digital state. And I have believed for quite some time that India stands at the threshold of a really enormous opportunity. And this opportunity, frankly, has come partly by design, but also partly by accident. That we stand at a confluence of many circumstances, not all of which were part of some grander design. And let me just mention a few of them to give a sense of what constitutes this confluence. First and foremost is the fact that technology itself has evolved to a point where it has capable of enormous scale. It has become very affordable. It has become very easy to adopt and use by common people. And India has a tremendous capability in the IT sector, which is now recognized the world over. And last, and possibly the most significant, is the fact that government itself has recognized, the centrality of digital to the future of the country. And over the years, each and every successive government has brought a new fillip to the march towards a digital India. And I can say this even though the term digital India may not have been used earlier, when the NEGP, for example, was started. It started as a much more humble exercise to make the government more efficient, more digital, more transparent, and at the end of the day, actually, to benefit citizens more directly and more individually. And today, of course, the government programs have advanced tremendously in sophistication and reach and leveraging the power of technology, so much so that some of them have actually become global, examples of how technology can be used in beneficial ways. I'm talking about things like the Aadhaar project, which was also conceived and originated at that time as a part of the NEGP. Programs like the CSC, which Samir has referred to, again, recognizing that India is very different from other countries and lots of people don't have access to any of these devices or technology or even the means or knowledge to benefit from it. So we have to think of them. CSC was an effort in that direction. And then there are programs like the UPI, which have played a major role in financial, not only in financial inclusion, but actually in bringing all of the digital financial institutions under a common framework and with interconnectivity and interoperability. And the direct benefit transfer, which has been enormously successful in eliminating, the kind of leakage that used to take place in the Indian delivery system. But today, we have an opportunity to go much further than that. Some people might think that this itself is a lot, but I do believe that there is an even bigger opportunity lying ahead of us, and that is, in my mind, the ability to use these new technologies, taking advantage of where they have reached today, and all the factors that I mentioned, scalability, affordability, ease of use, etc., and then apply them in some of the social sectors, areas where India has enormous challenges: education, healthcare, agriculture, skilling, employment, and so on. In all of these areas, these technologies can be leveraged in very meaningful ways. And in those areas, the usage of technology is, frankly, at its infancy. Areas like entertainment and e-commerce and so on have grown, on the strength of the private sector and the kind of capability and drive that they bring to the table. But in these areas of social sector, the role of the government, both as a provider and as a regulator, is very, very high. And therefore, the government does need to play a critical role, both as a provider and as a regulator, and more importantly, being aware, acutely aware of the difference between the two roles and being able to separate them in the way that they deal with them. I have in my current situation where I'm involved with a number of different organizations, apart from the NGO that Samir mentioned, been focused on areas of using newer technologies, especially like AI, IoT, and big data in areas like healthcare and agriculture. And what I do see is that in these areas, India has the opportunity to actually become a leader, and in using them in new ways. More importantly, in not just being a follower. In areas like e-commerce or entertainment, it would be fair to say that India has largely followed, models that have, evolved in more developed economies. And even in telecom, there has not been any significant technological contribution by India, but there have been enormous, innovations in the business model. But when you come to some of these areas, then there is really an opportunity to completely rethink the way services are delivered in those sectors. But it does require out-of-the-box thinking. And a lot of people have started thinking in those directions. And for example, if you see the book written by N. Chandra on Digital India, he gives as an example how, healthcare could be revolutionized. The essence of it is that you don't look at it as a purely digital play, and you look at a combination of digital and physical and combine them in very different and new ways. The banking correspondent model is an interesting example, and Samir actually mentioned that how much of a change it made when CSCs were allowed to become banking correspondents, overcoming a sort of deeply embedded view that somehow it should be a philanthropic activity. But scale, I believe strongly that scale, especially in a country of India's size and complexity, can come from only two things. Either it can come from a business model, which is a sustainable, viable business model, or from a government program. Philanthropy can create models and examples, but it's not really scalable. That's my own take on this. So really, those kind of, policies which are forward-looking, which look at the potential of technology, which creates space in which innovation can happen, space in which the private sector can operate, and with government sort of backstopping it in areas where, it requires more than just a business model and requires governmental intervention. But trying to do everything for the government actually would not only not lead to success, but it could actually impede the contribution, enormous contribution that the private sector can make. And this distinction, as well as this nuanced approach, actually will have to be enabled by regulation. And that's where the role of regulation comes in. And that's why the current focus of the center that I had actually is focused on the role of regulation and how regulation can enable, use of technologies in these areas. Uh, just as one example, the MAP policy, which very recently the government announced, is something which for almost 2 decades, for 20 years, I know that large parts of the government and a lot of people outside the government have been pressing for. And it's only now that finally the imperative was recognized and it was done. Better late than never, no doubt. Though in the process we may have lost some valuable time. But there are n number of examples like that where government can actually unlock enormous value just by policy tweaks of the kind that happened when post-liberalization, the telecom sector was liberalized. So the whole digital space is bristling with such opportunities, particularly because the entire innovation in technology comes from the private sector. Look at the way healthcare, remote care, for example, is shackled in so many different ways. Today, AI has come, and I don't think anybody can argue that the best AI is inferior to the best quacks that you have in rural areas. There's no point in pretending that people in those areas get the best services. How do you actually enable that without getting caught in the old shibboleths of the past? So this is where very imaginative, forward-looking regulation becomes important. And our effort has been to look at in what ways regulation can actually unlock this potential. Uh, Finally, I was told that, Karan, you are a great believer in India becoming a leader in SaaS, software as a service, as a leader in SaaS in the world. And if I may, I just want to slightly twist that around a little bit and talk about services as software and really talk about phygital services. India becoming, the uh, origin from which services in healthcare, in education, all of them are actually proliferated around the world, building on our successes in the rest of the digital space. So that's a whole new world awaiting us, a whole new world of economic opportunity, employment opportunities, and leveraging all that we have built up over the years. And I certainly look forward to being a small part of that and working with great leaders across different sectors who are driving that. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity, Samir, and all of you. And congratulations, Karan, once again, and signing off on this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chandrasekhar. As I mentioned, Karan had also contributed to the book Digital India, Developed India, and even that time his contribution was on government on the cloud. And I'm happy to invite him to talk about how does he see Digital India on the cloud now moving forward. A related question we got from a delegate, Mr. Karanjeet Lamba. He said we would be happy to know Digital India concept have any plan to restructure MSMEs. I think that's got partially answered, part of the answers in the cloud story. And Karan, since MSME is close to your heart, while talking, perhaps you would like to take that question as well.
Thank you, Sumit. Thank you very much. Let me first talk about two things before I come back to specific digital India on the cloud. One about a big technology transition that is happening in our industry, and second about the role of government. And then I'll come back to digital India on the cloud. Look, I think that if you reflect back on the entirety of the technology industry and possibly the last few decades of its adoption, we've seen the transition. We've seen about two to three very big transitions that have fundamentally redefined how technology gets adopted. I have my own kind of very simplistic way of defining, the adoption cycles of technology, and I call it the why to the wow to the why cycles of technology. When first technology came in, even in our country, there was a big question about how that's going to take away jobs, and there was a big why on technology. As people saw the early benefits, it was very clear that technology is going to fundamentally change many things. And there was a major wow in terms of how people thought about technology. As the spends grew and people again came to a stage about why, because that this time around, the spend on technology was becoming a significant part of your top line, bottom line, whichever way you look at it. It's gone through many cycles, but that's more about adoption. On the technology side, there have been 2 to 3 very big technology transitions that have fundamentally redefined the industry in many ways. It has redefined companies. If you reflect back and think about the companies that led technology 3 decades ago, many of them possibly are not around today. And even if you go back a decade ago, companies that were the leaders in technology today find themselves at odds. Now, I won't reflect into why of that, but it is just the fact that when technology transitions happen, it is a massive opportunity of disruption and fundamentally changing the consumption model. I believe what is happening in our industry now is not just about the cloud, it's about a fundamentally different way to consume technology. And as I was speaking to you about the why phase once again, as the spend on technology increases, and most CEOs and organizations are very concerned about the amount of capital going in the effective use of technology. The fact that they've got to do technology and use technology is a given. They cannot close their eyes to that. And I fundamentally say, if you go pre 2020, almost in every company, digital was a part of the strategy. It was some part of the core strategy the organizations were building. What has changed in 1 year? Now, I believe, is digital is the strategy. And I think that means that the spend on technology is absolutely going to go up. There is no questions about it because people will have to reinvent their businesses on technology. The differentiation as they engage with their clients will be on the basis of technology. So the spend is going to go up. So the question is, do you use scarce capital resource to drive that acceleration of technology? It's a very tough choice. If I'm a hospital, do I buy more beds or do I buy more technology? It's a tough choice. If I'm a steel company, do I buy more production lines or do I spend more on technology? It's a very tough choice, and that goes on. The change that is happening in our industry is that today you have a very mature consumption model that allows you to consume as you go, that allows you to spend as you go, that takes down the entry barrier of technology and allows you to use your capital for your core business and use your operational expenses to drive the use of technology. We've come through a fundamentally strong cycle of adoption, maturity, and while I guess the last 1 year was very unfortunate in terms of what we saw, it also was a major opportunity for people to change the use of technology. And I believe the SaaS model of consumption, the consumption model of technology, the cloud model of technology is a very big transition in the industry. That's one. Let me now come to the role of government. Contrary to what all of us or most of us think, that technology is first adopted by the private enterprise before the government takes on. I guess it's important to understand the role of the government in any major transition. Look at what India has achieved. Uh, we are now close to a $200 billion IT services market or IT services business that is serviced from the country. This is IT services. I believe we are on the throes or the chasm of another big transformation that could fundamentally change India's role in the world from an IT standpoint. And that is about the role that India will play in the next phase. We serviced the world very well in terms of the arbitrage that we could afford in terms of delivering technology effectively to clients. No one's lost the point on the role that Indian companies have played in the world on IT is not lost on anyone. There is a massive reinvention opportunity. This time around, a major value arbitrage that we can create by fundamentally reinventing our skills on things like artificial intelligence, on security, on IoT, on machine learning, etc. Capabilities that have a very high value arbitrage versus a cost arbitrage advantage. And herein, the big mountain that India has to climb is one of skill sets. So successful is India on the services industry that it is almost a pretty large mountain to climb when it has to reskill itself in being relevant in the new phase of technology. Now, there comes the role of government. Government is one of the largest consumers of technology, unparalleled, and Indian public sector is one of the largest, is the largest in my view in India single largest consumer of technology. If I take the aggregate of all of what government is at the central, at the state level, it is by far, by a mile, the largest consumer. If India and the Indian public sector takes a call to reinvent its technology adoption and anchor it on the newer capabilities, as I said, AI, ML, IoT, fundamentally change how security is adopted, while there will be a boost that is given to the technology industry, it will fundamentally allow people to reskill on scale. And that is what the Indian industry needs, a large consumer, which becomes the reason for them to fundamentally reinvent themselves. Those two things I wanted to make a point. Now, in terms of the Indian public sector, I think India, no questions about it, is among the largest, cloud consumption markets in the Asia Pacific region, and public sector stands out in that sense. It's one of the fastest growing. I guess the projection is for it to grow from about 2.6 billion uh, in maybe a year and a half ago to about $8 billion by the time we are in 2023. Now, these numbers could change. These numbers were pre-COVID, and I feel there is a significant. I believe there is a 3 to 4 year plus acceleration in the use of technology. So we could see these numbers play out much faster, and the potential for deeper penetration of public cloud in India becomes all the more evident, given that the market is still at a very early stage in terms of adoption. If you see India, possibly it's a very close one when it comes to the cloud services market relative to China in that sense. And we've done an amazing job in terms of overcoming some of the inconsistencies in high-speed internet connectivity, power, bandwidth, the optical fiber connections, and interest in the consumption model is being driven by the increasing need for business innovation and agility. The national e-governance policy has played an amazing role in terms of allowing us to democratize technology, take it to places which were unimaginable. Think about having 4G connectivity in places that you never even thought you could ever reach in India, and that is the democratization that the national e-governance policy and now Digital India has allowed us to do. There is a massive change in the mindset of Indian organizations as they adopt technology. They're starting to understand the complexities of data, and they're willing to adopt the new consumption model on scale. My view, there hasn't been a stronger case for leveraging digital as a differentiator in this time post COVID, where it has become very evident for us that businesses that are digitally transformed, enabled, have a way better shot at success and at business continuity than at businesses who are not. Organizations that will embrace digitization on scale have literally pulled ahead of their peers. There are so many examples that we have seen. Uh, Digital as a differentiator means we need to focus on a few things. There is a mindset that we need to change. There is methods, and there is really making sure that you quantify the metrics for your digital acceleration and transformation. So you're able to really see the benefits, and they're able to invest more and more into them. There are many economies, including India, that are majorly betting on a new digital native ecosystem that is going to become the growth engine for the economy. We have seen what transformation India has achieved. That transformation that is really needed to make the core enterprise, the traditional enterprise, uh, adopt the same level of transformation. That is the big question for us, and how will these organizations embrace technology? I believe the technology industry is constantly evolving in a major chain reaction of rapid developments. I shared the whole consumption model that has become very mature, especially the post-pandemic world. The business tech landscape is changing unlike ever before. I said it's 3 to 4 years of acceleration, possibly more as we come out of COVID. We will realize what it's done to adoption of technology. Never has that been felt more than in 2020. And I believe it's an amazing opportunity for Indian organizations, Indian government, who are not afraid to adopt and take risks with the adoption of digital across all layers of the ecosystem, whether it is social, government, business. I see there is a next wave of digitization that is coming our way, which will be multifold in impact than what we've seen in the last 15 years. We need to be prepared. We need to build and ensure that we as a country are able to leverage this opportunity to improve the lives of the billions of people. And Samir, we have spoken about the digital divide that has existed in our country. This is the opportunity to completely bridge that digital divide and build a new India that our government and the Prime Minister has been envisioning. I continue. I'm very optimistic about what we will achieve in this country, and I look forward to being a part of that journey more than ever before. Back to you, Sandeep. Thank you.
Thank you so much. With that, I move on to Shefali ji. We're already behind schedule terribly. So Shefali ji, if you could help us concentrate the wisdom of the discussion and bring this all together and also share your thoughts, it would be very nice.
Yeah, thank you, Samir. Congratulations, Mr. Bajwa, for receiving the Scotch Challenger Award. In fact, this is undoubtedly the recognition to for your contribution in adaptation of technology in the journey called Digital India. Congratulations again. Sir, Mr. Chandrasekhar, sir, seeing you today here actually brings back a lot of memories. We traveled the journey together since I think 2000, in the beginning of 2000 or so. And you are the, what should I say, the foundation stone was for Digital India, which was called at that time NEGP. In fact, NEGP, if I remember correctly, is your naming. You started this and you named it as an NEGP. It started as NGP, NEG, two, three names, and then finally you finalize it as NEGP. So, sir, I remember those days, and seeing you here, it's really a fitting, what should I say, the platform for the award where adaptation of technology is being recognized, and you are the one who actually laid the founding stone for this. So that's good. And Samir, we go back long way, as you said. In fact, when everybody was doing, like we were doing, formulating projects, implementing them, you are the one who started early 2000, I think 2004, 2005, when you started evaluating those projects. What is their efficiency? And then you used to rank them, key performance indicator, you devise them, and then you came up with some suggestions that this project is doing good in this and this is not so good, comparing this with the other project, like the e-Gyana in Madhya Pradesh. So like that, you have done that, which has actually led to improvising and modifying course correction for many of these projects. So I'm very happy that you are continuing with this, and you and Scotch are encouraging people, the young implementers, how to, do a project, do it well, so that others can, emulate best practices and all that. Thank you, Samir. I just want to make two, three things here. See, everybody recognizes that India has done well in our digital journey, and Digital India, the vision of Prime Minister is quite well recognized. And during this COVID pandemic, it has been well demonstrated also the way we have identified, isolated, and treated COVID patients, and reducing restricting the spread, and containing the zones. All this using technology has been really good, and we have been using large number of applications like storing documents electronically in DigiLocker, Bhim application for digital payments, or e-Sanjeevani for national teleconsultation health OPD. These are all good initiatives. But in spite of these achievements, we still need to do so many other things. For example, high-speed internet connectivity across the country is still not that good. It's there, but not really reliable and secure. We have to make it that way. Similarly, we do have to do, the cloud infrastructure. We do have it, but whether it is that uh, on demand, can we really say that we can provide cloud infrastructure on demand? It's our vision, but we still haven't reached that stage. Similarly, electronic manufacturing. We have this slogan of make in India, make for India, and make for the world. To reach that stage, we really have to enhance our electronic manufacturing capabilities. And using digital technologies to improve efficiency and productivity across diverse sectors like healthcare, agriculture, education, transportation, energy, financial services. These are very important. More than that, Also, we have to encourage growth of sustainable digital ecosystem, comprising digital communication services, IT and BPM, e-commerce, and direct subsidy transfer. We have kind of demonstrated that yes, we can do that. So it has been demonstrated that this could be achieved if a strong impetus is given by the political leadership. That is very clear. Everybody understands that. And emerging disruptive technologies like AI, ML, big data, blockchain, robotics, they can be used to accelerate the progress. And by leveraging, our India is full of young talent and tech savvy young talent. There is no doubt about it. So if we can enhance their capabilities by supplanting research and innovation and encourage out of box solutions, we can definitely achieve the dream of becoming a $1 trillion digital economy. That's all I have got to say.
Thank you so much, Shefali ji. That question remains unanswered. How do you see Digital India panning out for MSMEs? Perhaps Mr. Chandrasekhar, you would like to throw some light on that?
Yeah, I think that Samir, thank you for giving me the chance to respond to that question. I think it's a very, very important question because exactly as Karan was talking earlier about the whole raging controversy when technology first came, whether it's going to eliminate jobs or all those apprehensions. And eventually it has clearly shown that now it has ended up creating more jobs. It has ended up leveling opportunity. It has ended up spreading opportunity. Similarly, in the case of MSMEs, there are all these apprehensions that technology is somehow going to, wipe out the MSMEs, and it's only the large companies which can afford, adoption of these new technologies and which can actually have a plan to leverage technologies which will succeed, and the MSMEs will not have that opportunity. But actually, again, I see clearly that what is happening is the reverse. Smaller companies which hitherto did not have access to India-wide markets or even global markets are able to get access to those markets. Small companies which could not afford the cost of adopting technology are today able to adopt technology, again, because of some of the things that Karan mentioned about technology itself coming up with innovative ways, enabling people to adopt technology without huge capital investments, thanks to technologies like cloud technology and subscription models and so on, so that we have actually eliminated those startup costs. Remember that for a country like India, costs, especially capital costs, are extremely important and are a prime factor. And we've seen that in the whole mobile revolution. So I do believe that for MSMEs, it's a great opportunity, except that I would say that MSMEs which are not cognizant of the way that the world is moving and which are not alive to these possibilities, for them, I think things would be difficult. But you don't need anything more than just taking note of the directions of change and then adopting the new ways, and then you have a much larger vista opening up for you. So net, I believe it's a great opportunity for India's MSMEs to actually go global and national wherever they're operating.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chandrasekhar. With that, we come to the end of this first panel, Architects of Digital India. Thank you very much. Pleasure meeting all of you again. And we now move on to the next panel, for which I invite Dr. Gursharan Dhanjal to take over and start the
Thank you, Samir. Thank you, Gursharan. Thank you, Shefali. And congratulations, Karan.
Thank you very much, everyone. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, sir. Actually, it has been a real pleasure to see you, Mr. Chandrasekhar, sir. You have been our mentor.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Shefali. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for joining us, and Karan, congratulations to you.